Radio legend Steve Wright died of a broken heart after being dumped by BBC, friends reveal. Radio legend Steve Wright died of a broken heart after being dumped by the BBC, according to pals. They said he never got over being axed from his Radio 2 afternoon show after 24 years. Yesterday there was a backlash against the BBC boss responsible for the scheduling shakeup. In a tribute, Helen Thomas called Steve second to none. Less than 18 months after taking away his hugely popular show in 2022. Steve, 69, was found dead at his London flat on Monday. His death is not being treated as suspicious. Celebrity publicist Gary Farrow revealed his friend of 40 years found dead this week, aged 69, was devastated to lose his massively popular Radio 2 slot 2 years ago. Gary blasted BBC bosses who deemed Steve too old, saying there was no one more current. He added, "Steve lived for that show, he absolutely loved it, and the listeners loved him. My view is that he died from a broken heart." Listeners and BBC staff were left enraged yesterday at a gushing tribute from station boss Helen Thomas, who got rid of Steve and his popular colleagues Paul O'Grady and Ken Bruce. Steve's departure from his show after 24 years led to Radio 2 shedding 1 million listeners. Gary told how his painfully shy friend needed an arm round the shoulder from his bosses, but it never came. He said, "From what I know, he didn't have any real medical problems, he was always taking vitamins and popping pills. Sure, he didn't really eat broccoli and he liked McDonald's, but he was such a character, the likes of which I don't think we will see again. He would spend hours and hours researching before a show, checking out guests and doing his homework. Radio was his life. He was Mr. Showbiz. He was the first to discuss and champion new books, films, records, and TV shows, and so progressive in that respect. So quite how the BBC could decide he was too old or not current enough is a joke. There was no one more current or on the pulse than Steve. There was no one more relevant. Everybody loved him on and off air." He said the broadcasting giant was the last of the old guard and radio is all the poorer for it. Gary, who was due to meet him for lunch tomorrow, went on. "Everybody loved him on and off air, although he was actually painfully shy, and never wanted to attend these big doses that bosses wanted to will him out at. But he just wanted someone at the BBC to put an arm around him every now and then, and say, 'You're doing a great job, Steve. We all love you.' But I don't think anybody ever did, that's all he wanted. I'll never understand the decision to let him go. It devastated him." The national institution lost his legendary Steve Wright in the afternoon show in 2022, with Scott Mills taking over in a bid to attract a younger audience. The move was blasted as diabolical at the time. Steve continued to present Sunday love songs on Radio 2. He signed off the day before his death with the poignant final words, "I'm back for more love songs next Sunday." Ta-ta then. After the tragic news broke, tributes flooded in for the radio colossus, while anger mounted against the corporation. Fellow broadcaster Liz Kershaw said yesterday, "It's shabby, it's hypocritical. They just dumped him. New management said we're going to refresh the schedule, and they treat people like tins of beans on a shelf. I doubt that there was any follow-up, or any pastoral care, or any support for him. He didn't need money as he has been one of the highest paid people on air. But, I wonder if they considered how it affected him." Staff enraged at shake-up boss. "There are some people for whom fame and attention are their oxygen. And he was one of those. It was absolutely his life." Steve's departure in 2022, which followed the loss of other beloved stars including Bruce and O'Grady, led to an exodus of listeners. In October, Radio 2 registered 13.5 million a week, $1 million down on the year before. Insiders said yesterday that station staff were enraged at comments from Ms. Thomas responsible for the shake-up following Steve's death. She described him as a consummate professional and said he was always second to none. A memo added, "Steve was the first presenter I ever produced, more than 20 years ago, and I remember the pure amazement I felt. Sitting opposite this legendary broadcaster whose shows I had listened to and marveled at whilst growing up in Hull." Her tribute went down badly with many listeners, including one who posted, "Is this the same Helen Thomas who ripped out his soul when she took away his show?" I love the tributes from fans/colleagues/friends, but I am sickened by the gushing from BBC management who threw Steve because of his age on the scrap heap. He lost purpose, so sad. Another added, "Shame on Helen Thomas who pushed Steve off his afternoon show for a mediocre replacement. I am convinced it affected Steve adversely. I am as annoyed today as I was when he announced that HT wanted to do something different. Horrible mistake, Helen, and it is not forgotten." One listener wrote, "Helen Thomas's comments about Steve Wright. How ironic. The BBC doesn't care about how the public feels about any of the greats that were sacked/demoted. Your salaries are guaranteed, whether you do your jobs properly or not. By contrast, the talented seem disposable to you. Ugh." Steve, who joined Radio 1 in 1980, discussed the scheduling changes in 2022, and typically did not complain. He said, "At the beginning of this year, my friend and boss Helen Thomas, head of Radio 2, said she wanted to do something different in the afternoons. I've been doing this program for 24 years at Radio 2, so how can I possibly complain? The support and creative freedom I'm given is fantastic, and really I can't hold the slot forever. So let's give somebody else a go." U.S. composer Anthony James yesterday shared a snap of the pair, which is believed to be one of the last taken of the DJ, who is wearing a black suit, shirt, and tie. The devastated musician wrote, "I can't sleep. I'm thinking of my dear friend Steve. We took this picture 4 weeks ago in New York. We were trying to do, as he put it, ironic selfies. He had such a love of life and radio. He told me AJ the blonde hair has to go. I miss him #RIP Steve Wright." Long-term pal Vanessa Feltz said after he died, "The BBC should never ever have deprived Steve's listeners of his hugely popular record-breaking daily show. They thought they knew better." On Talk TV yesterday she added she found it hilarious when he sang along to songs he played. He'd just blithely sing, come crashing in with his own chords, and some people used to complain. But I used to absolutely love it.